Today, we're sitting down with Lukas Cobian of Euphoria MX Rider Development, chatting about the business of coaching in the motorsports world, going a step deeper, motocross and supercross. Lukas, how's it going today?
It's going great, man. How you doing?
What is Euphoria MX?
Euphoria MX is it's a training. It's where you go to learn how to ride a dirt bike. You know, if you have goals to be a pro one day, we have everything it takes to get you there, and or just be a safe rider overall. It's a community. You can meet a bunch of people here.
It's a motocross, supercross, dirt bike training business. So you basically function as a coach. What's your background?
My background, it kind of started out, I've lived on this property here in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. At a year old, there's a bunch of pictures of me just obsessed with dirt bikes and just around it 24/7. By the time I was 3, I was riding. And then by the time I turned 7, I was racing. I've always kind of tried to progress, and I always had that dream of being a top pro one day. With riding dirt bikes, it's dangerous. You have injuries, you have all that involved with it as well. And when I would get hurt, I was always at the track, you know, trying to help my buddies or doing whatever it took to make them better too. So I've always tried to make it to the top level myself. Even when I had a downfall or something that would hold me back, I was always there, like coaching. So it's kind of my background. It's what makes me who I am today. I've always just been so passionate about the sport and helping the sport grow and helping my buddies get better and myself, and we all push each other to get better. So that's kind of how it all started.
So age 3, you get your first dirt bike. Age 7, you're racing. Walk us through just the racing piece, because this is kind of the tuition, and I think this sets the stage for how Lukas can be coaching other athletes and riders. You attain pro status, correct?
Correct.
That's the top of the sport. You can't go any higher. I mean, we could have a conversation about seasons and points and championships and things of that nature, but at the end of the day, you made it.
Right. And yeah, when I was, 3 years old, I'd say that was the ultimate goal, the dream. I'd watch it on TV, but, I'd say my first race when I was 7 years old, there was zero chance I ever would have thought that I'm going to be where I am today. So it all kind of happens really quickly, but you have to just trust the process. It's like, to see where I'm at today, it's came so far, and there's been the ups and the downs and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, to truly make it is incredible. It's been a long time coming, and it's crazy.
How many hours do you think you have on a bike in the dirt? And even if if you count how many of your big bikes had hour meters, where are we? Thousands of hours?
Yeah, definitely in the thousands. It's like you try to put about 100 hours on a bike, you'll sell it. You have to rebuild it a couple times in between there. And yeah, let's say you put 100 hours on a bike, and I've had, 20 big bikes and, all kinds of little bikes. I've had so many bikes growing up. Typically, like a normal day of riding, you want to try to get like an hour of seat time would be awesome. I remember some of the places I lived at, we would get 2 hours of seat time in a day. And to some people that probably doesn't sound much, but everything you're doing it's very strenuous. You're using all your muscles. It's high cardiovascular. So yeah, to ride for 2 hours a day it's a long time.
Countless hours of seat time. And that's where, I always call it tuition. Tuition doesn't just refer to you went and spent money and earned college credits. You have to go get those life experiences. And in your case, that seat time puts you kind of in the cockpit, literally, to understand what you're teaching other riders and understand what works and what doesn't. And then you mentioned something about places you rode 2 hours. You actually went and lived at some of the top tracks or training compounds or training facilities in the motocross, supercross sport. Is that correct?
That's correct. And that's kind of a cool thing too, because I'd say by the time I started racing when I was 7, there really wasn't much for coaching out there. You could buy this DVD. It was like a Gary Semix DVD. It was maybe 2 hours long, and he actually had a couple of them. So I'd say you could watch maybe 10 to 20 hours of footage. And this dude was pretty old school. It was like, I couldn't imagine many kids nowadays would sit there and listen to it, but I just, truly wanted to get better. I had a piece of property, which is where we do all of our training now. So when I was a kid, I started out with just watching those DVDs and, just studying it and then going out there and trying it. And then later in life, I was just, looking for, by the time I was 16, 17, there was maybe 1 or 2 facilities out there. And the one was pretty new. I found it on YouTube, and I was like really researching it. And I was begging my mom to go there and my parents to go there. And, it was a big process because, 16, 17, I had to make that decision of, like if I really want to do this and really try to gamble and make it happen, I had to do the homeschooling route, just put all of my eggs in one basket and see where it took me.
And then you actually went and lived at some of these facilities by yourself.
Yep. So when I was like 16, they would have a coach there or whatever. And I would live in my camper, and they were basically my legal guardian. And yeah, you would wake up early, 7 in the morning. You would do like an hour of cardio. You'd eat your breakfast, you ride all day, you do your bike work, you do a workout at the end of the day. And that was basically all we did every single day. So anything it took to be a little bit better on the bike is where we put all of our focus.
And that's what, again, back to that tuition. So that these are the steps that somebody takes to be a good coach and a good trainer. Like you recognize you wanted to be at the top of the sport, and you made the commitment and the sacrifices, and certainly your family did, to go and do those things, including living in another state on a property and basically homeschooling and riding every day.
Right.
Now, what about USMCA? So there's now actually a certification for coaches and trainers, and you have that, correct?
Correct. So yeah, that's really grown the sport a lot. I feel like that came out maybe, I don't know, I think I heard about it probably 2 years ago. They've probably been around maybe 3-4 years at this point. But I think, the first certified coach here in Wisconsin. At this point, it has grown quite a bit. There's a lot of coaching, and it's grown the sport a lot. Like when I was a kid growing up, you would see the kind of the speeds of everyone and the techniques. And like I was saying, there wasn't much out there. So we were all kind of just riding, and there wasn't much structure to it. So now the structure and the training is next level. So you go to a race nowadays, and even from the 6-year-old kids all the way up to 50-year-olds is very advanced, and the techniques have changed so much. So it's really cool.
And now there's an accreditation body, a group that will award a certification that says, Lukas has demonstrated he's proficient in the right training methods, proper training methods to safely take a rider from point A to B.
Correct. Yeah, there's a lot of steps that go into it, and you really don't want to take any shortcuts, and you really want to be, it's a dangerous sport. So it is very important to go out there and get a coach and make sure that you have proper training. And if you don't, you'll progress if you keep going to the track. Yeah, it's super important to have that structure and have someone watching over you.
In the certification thing, from a coaching standpoint, over the years, for those that don't know, I owned a large commercial gym, and at any given time I had 12 to 14 employees, couple interns, and about half of them were trainers and coaches. It's not that a certification makes the coach or trainer, but what the certification does, in my eyes, it says that person was willing to do the little things, the extra little step that says, hey, I actually know what I'm doing, and I've earned this accreditation, I've earned this certification. And to me, that starts to separate coaches and trainers. It's not that without that somebody can't be a coach and trainer. They can, but it really speaks to, is that coach or trainer willing to do the little things? And when I look at certifications, that's what that tells me.
And it kind of all goes back to, like I was saying, when I was training, like every little thing I could do to be a little bit better, I was always willing to do that when it came to my racing. And that's a cool thing about dirt bikes, in my opinion, is it's kind of carried out in my entire life at this point. So like all of those little things and the training, and, you have to put a lot of mindset work into it. Like all of those things that I've worked on for so many years have really just changed my demeanor and the way I do things nowadays, even with business.
That certification is an example of just one of those little things. And if we cherry pick motocross or supercross, and you own your own property, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, but let's just, what's a good lap time on your supercross track?
Good lap time on the supercross track is somewhere around 52 seconds. That's a solid supercross lap time. I mean, if you were to watch it on TV, they're doing, sometimes it's around 52 seconds as well.
So 52 seconds. Now we're talking about the little things that matter. If you take fractions of a second off, you just gave yourself a half a bike length potentially at the checkers. Right. And that's why that's just one example of why the little things matter. And then when we look at somebody moving like you have from athlete to coach, trainer, business owner, the little things matter in business too.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah. You don't want to overlook anything. I feel like, you want to have the littlest details as best as possible as well. So even with business, it's always like work in progress. So, I'm always learning new things. I try to put all of the time into just like, if it's trying to make everything look nicer when you pull in the driveway or whatever it is, I put my focus on every little detail. So, I really do put 100% into this. I don't do too much else other than just really try to put 100% into my riders and growing the business and just being the best I can with this, because it's what I'm passionate about.
And that again is why, like, the certification doesn't make the coach or trainer, but when I see people willing to do that little thing, it usually indicates they're going to do the other little things, and the little things matter. They matter in business, and they definitely matter when you have a coach or trainer that's working with you or maybe even your kids.
Right.
So that's huge. Your facility is in Wisconsin,
Correct. We're
and
about, 5 miles from the Illinois border.
you have, like, walk us through what's at your facility.
So at our facility, we have Supercross track, and it's a great track for like learning Supercross. There's not much around here for Supercross. A lot of it's out in California and in Florida and stuff like that. So we're basically the first Supercross track that you can come and ride here in Wisconsin. So it's kind of a cool thing for all these kids around here. The sport has progressed so much here in the Midwest, and now that we have something like this, it's really growing the sport around here as well. And then we have an outdoor track, which that track, it's a little bit more rutted, and you see like some mud and stuff out there, some elevation, a little bit of a longer lap time. In some ways, I would say people would think that's a little bit more challenging, but as well, it depends on if you're hitting all the jumps too. So Supercross is a little bit more dangerous. It's more about timing and flow than our outdoor track with elevation and, a little bit of mud, ruts. That one is about you need really good technique for all of those things. We also have a woods loop and some beginner loops and just all kinds of drills that we can set out here on the property. So from beginner to expert.
And you kind of recognize that from a facility standpoint, you really need to check all of the boxes. You're able to provide a really rutted, muddy course to train people on, and you're able to provide a supercross course that's not going to be as muddy, and you're able to do it in the Midwest.
Right. Yeah, it's really cool. I think I try to make a track that works for everyone, and that's a really difficult thing to do. But at this point, I've been doing it my whole life. I've ridden at tracks all around the country. I'm constantly studying the different tracks and the different soils and the different things that they're mixing in. That way, we have everything you need. So when you get to the races, you're not going to feel out of place. We have every size jump and different corners and off cambers and like things that are angled differently. We have a little bit of everything, so you can have that wide spectrum of training when you come here.
And that too comes from that tuition that you paid as a young rider, traveling, living in other states, really as a kid, seeing and experiencing firsthand what it's like to ride in clay, what it's like to ride in sand, what it's like to ride in hard, dry, packed earth.
Yeah.
In all of those things, and you're able to bring that back and deliver that experience in your own facility to the athletes you train. In full disclosure, I haven't said this yet, but I've gone and worked with Lukas. I'm kind of the middle-aged, old and slow guy. My son has as well. And when we look at that, you have people like me that approaching 50 years of age, never raced, zero experience really on a dirt bike. And then you've got 5-year-olds, some cases top 5 in the entire country. I know just a week ago, cherry picking 65, there's a young man that he's one of 114 racers that made it to the races last week. And then he was a top 10 and I believe one event. And then you've got teenagers that are on the verge of becoming pro. Like, you can't get more diverse than that in terms of your customers. So from your standpoint, what does that look like?
It actually, it could look pretty overwhelming at times. You have all these different people out there with different skill levels and things like that. But to just simplify it, it just all comes down to just the little things all over again. So if I'm working with someone and it's their first day at the track, well, you really want to make it simple and kind of work on one thing at a time. And that way it's not too overwhelming. You try to just work on the basics. If it's their first day riding, well, they're going to have to come back tons of times before you start to learn. You could keep coming back, and there's a new technique every single time you come back. For almost, I'd say a year or 2 years, if you're coming consistently, there's always something new to learn. But then you have someone that's, top 5 in the country. Well, now it comes down to those tenths of seconds. If everyone's doing a 52-second lap time, what can you do to be a little bit faster, whether it's in your shifting or, your corner speed, your entry speed? It could even be in like, did you sleep good last night? Are you properly warmed up before the race? Like anything that you can do to try to be a little bit better, whether it's, eating healthy, hydration. You have to be confident when you're on the line too. So with someone that's top 5 in the country, we're looking at like, you have to go really deep into it to find the little things to get better. But if you have someone day one riding on the track, there's always something to learn. So you could always add in new techniques and stuff, but just starting with one thing at a time is important.
From a coaching standpoint, one thing that you typically do that's interesting and I think powerful in terms of delivering results and being able to do it much faster. If we look at the classroom, some students learn by hearing, some learn by seeing, some learn by doing, and then some have to put all three together.
Right.
In Euphoria MX, you oftentimes have two coaches. So
Yep.
you have one coach demonstrating, and that's typically Cody Van Buskirk, and he's also a pro racer.
Correct.
And so Cody's going to demonstrate so people can see. And then Lukas is there, you're there in the dirt, and now you can say and tell. So now they can hear, and then they're given an opportunity to hop on their bikes and do what they were just taught and shown. And then you have two coaches in the dirt right there, hands on, saying, nope, correct this small thing.
Yeah. And that's why I think it's really cool too. It kind of all goes back to my whole career. Like that's why Euphoria MX is what it is today. Is when I was 7 years old and I was watching those little DVDs, I had to watch something to learn it. And then I'd go out there and try it. And at a certain point, it's like, you know, eventually I get faster than my dad. My dad kind of grew up riding and stuff too. So eventually when I was faster than my dad, he couldn't really help me too much anymore. So at that point, it was like, all right, Dad, now I need you to record every race and every lap that I'm doing. So when I'm done, I can go back and study that footage. And now go into all these other facilities and stuff. I kind of see some of the things that they weren't doing. Like we didn't have someone to show. And I'm kind of that type of person. I like to watch and learn and, you know, have someone over me all the time telling me like, you could do this a little bit better, that a little bit better. So I just try to
So you were already, as a kid, that's very intuitive. You were already asking your dad to film you and then watching your footage.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I was so big about all that stuff. I just wanted to be the best I possibly could. And I would watch these videos and, you know, I'm thinking I'm doing all this stuff right. And I could always pick out even little things with myself from like, oh man, I just saw that dude on TV doing this. And I'm, you know, 12 years old doing it like that. Like I can see that I need to do this a little bit differently. So I was studying footage at a young age. And,
you know, if you look at a college football program, they have film days.
oh yeah.
Yet here you are, a kid in Wisconsin. This isn't the hub of motocross, right? It's
Right.
Wisconsin. Like they got cheese.
Yeah.
And you're having your dad videotape you, and then you're watching it, and you were able to see, hey, I watched the Semic video and I saw this and I thought I was doing that, but when I watched the video, I'm not.
Right.
Is that how you arrived at having the two coach?
Yeah, that is, because I felt like it was essential. I think you kind of need to have, like we're talking about, everyone learns a little bit differently, but I think if you have both things there, you have someone kind of breaking down the techniques and someone demonstrating it, it just makes it that much easier. There's times where, like you said, sometimes it is the one coach, and typically that would be for a one-on-one or something. But if I'm doing a one-on-one and I tell someone like, hey, try it like this, and they can't quite figure it out, I know that person needs to see it. I'm going to have to go out there and demonstrate it. So that's what I'll end up doing if it's just the one coach. But we try to, at this point, we want it to be two coaches all the time, because that's just what works.
And we owned an Athletic Republic franchise, which trains athletes. We would teach proper running mechanics. We would do it on a treadmill with a coach right next to the athlete in front of a mirror. So now the athlete could see, hear, and be corrected by the coach. And one of the first times I went and watched Euphoria train, I'm like, holy cow, I wonder how these guys came up with this? Because I don't think a lot of people in motorsports of any type are doing that.
Yeah, there's really not. I haven't seen too many people do it. I've seen some people try it and they ended up not sticking with it. But yeah, for us, it's worked very great. And yeah, if it's working great for us, I don't really see a need to change it. But we're always looking for growth and new ideas and trying new things as well. So we just do that with the two coaches.
The only way to make that better would be to provide instant video feedback, which the ability in reality to do that with today's technology is hard. Like on a treadmill, you could have a fixed camera and there's software available where it'll record and then it will stop and then it will play that clip 2 or 3 times so the athlete could hop off the treadmill and see. But really that might be down the road, but I think you guys are doing it. And
Yeah,
I think Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I would love to get the videos out there so people can see them right away. If you were to like look at our social media, you can see we're out there taking tons of videos. And if you come to a class, at the end, we'll be taking videos and stuff like that. I'm sure there's some people that are thinking like, is he coaching right now at this point when we have the two coaches out there? But at the end of the day, Cody and I will both sit down and we review all of that footage. We're taking down notes. So the next time you come back, we have more things to work on. And if I could get that out to our clients and our riders and all the people that we're working with like really quick, I could almost put some notes in there for them as well and break it down even more, because there's tons of things that like if I'm just sitting there at night, like I can just pick out so many little things. I'm sending people text messages and all kinds of stuff. So
There should be no surprise to that if you were intuitive enough to ask your dad to film and we're studying and reading your mechanics on the bike in your film of you.
yep.
And then, using technology at the time. And then once again, using technology, which is grabbing that footage and then being able to look at it and say, hey, this rider next time, I need to remind them the elbows need to be here, because every
Right.
time I watch them on tape, they're doing it wrong. So
Exactly.
that's pretty powerful. And that too, I don't know that every coaching and training business is using current technology and using the tools available. And the reality of it is everybody's got one of these.
Yeah, I agree. And even for me, it's like there's certain things that like right now my watering system could be a little bit better. When I think about it, it's like, I spend so much time working on the track. If you can get these systems a little bit better where, it's like if you look at Walmart, everything is self-checkout now. Things are changing and not everyone loves that kind of stuff. But kind of what I'm getting at is if I can get my track to self-water and things like that, I can save time with not having to work on the track so much and putting in a little bit more time for the training and the coaching as well.
You're in the Midwest, you have your own property, you have a big valley, and we're recording this in November. So we're at the start of the valley. It's going to be winter. The ground's going to freeze. We'll have snow, we'll have sleet,
Right.
which means for a business like yours, it can be seasonal, but you found a way to fill in that valley by doing some indoor training. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think that's a huge key to making the Midwest grow in this sport a lot because, yeah, there was nowhere to ride growing up in the winter. We live in, Wisconsin or the Midwest, there's people all around here that can't ride all winter. So now that there's an indoor track here in Mendota, Illinois, it's ran by great people. They run the whole District 17 races and everything like that. They're great people to be involved with. And the track is great for training. So to be inside and to have that opportunity to learn new habits and break, old habits and to just continue progressing is a huge value to our sport.
This sport in the Midwest is starting to see two things. One, that young kids are receiving proper instruction because they're not having the falls and even little things. If you have a 5 or 6 year old and they tip over, they need to be able to pick up the motorcycle.
Yep.
And a lot of the kids are now able to do that. Now, some of them, like my kid's done this. He just stood there and looked at it in a race because in his words, he was tired. But you guys are teaching the little things, like even like, here's how you pick your motorcycle back up and get going. And at the bigger end, I think from what I've heard, we're seeing the sport is starting to see Midwest kids be more competitive because they have an indoor place to ride in the winter instead of having to take months off or move to Florida or out west.
Right. And now that all of these riders are getting, better techniques and stuff, especially, the sport has grown and the techniques have changed over the years. I also think the longevity of a motocrosser's career is going to be a little bit longer as well. I'm 27 years old, and I think the average lifespan of a professional motocross racer is 27. A lot of the top guys retired at that age. I think with new techniques, and if you're focusing really heavily on these techniques, you're going to have a longer career and less injuries, which was a huge downfall of this sport, 10, 20 years ago. The injuries are so bad, but if you can perfect your technique and the bikes are a little bit easier to maintain, a little bit more reliable, things like that, the sport is going to grow.
So you found a way to fill the winter valley and take a seasonal business into a business that you can do year round, which is producing better athletes that are going to be more competitive just because they get seat time 12 months of the year, not 8 or 9. But then there's techniques that you teach that are going to allow the rider to do things correctly, and correctly means you're safer, and correct and safe means you're faster.
Yeah, and there's some techniques that everyone needs to be doing, and it's very important. And then there's other techniques where it's like sitting down in a corner with a certain rut. Like there's, not one right or wrong way to do it. Some people will sit down here, some people will sit down there. We'll go over all those things.
So you'll cover the options. And again, it's going to lead to that safer rider, greater longevity, and then a better lap time. And even drawing on a memory from our old business, we had Division I university football head football coach come and see me to see what we were doing with our athletes. And he spent like an hour with us and then made the head strength coach come spend a few hours with me, which the dude was really not happy about. The football coach said, he goes, what I'm seeing is, in a real simple way to state it, you're teaching athletes to get in good football positioning. Athletes in good football positioning don't get hurt. I can't coach athletes on the sidelines on crutches.
Right.
So back to your cornering thing, those little things that matter, the techniques are going to allow that rider to stay on the bike, be safer, and that's going to lead to they get more reps and they get more coaching because they're not injured, and that translates to better lap times and faster riding.
Right. And yeah, more confidence too. Cause yeah, if you're crashing a lot and you're getting hurt, like that can take a big toll on you. Yeah. It's important to just stay healthy and just be consistently putting in those laps.
I've always been of the opinion, going back over 20 years, the first time I saw a powerlifting great who was also a coach work with a 2B powerlifter, I realized that it's not just the athlete. It's the combination of an athlete and a good coach, and a good coach inspires confidence in the athlete. And suddenly the athlete's able to do things they otherwise couldn't. And you just mentioned confidence. And, if you've fallen off of a motorcycle, you've crashed on a dirt bike, it does set your confidence back. From a coaching standpoint, how do you manage that? How do you bring that rider's confidence back up?
Yeah, I try to be very smart about it and try to have a strategy. It's like if someone's coming over to the track and like, man, I really want to hit this jump or something, I'm trying to tell them you're going to get more of a benefit out of working on this or that. And eventually when you're ready, we'll go work on that jump. But it's about just managing it. And that was one thing I didn't really have growing up was, I was trying to learn those things and try it and go faster and faster. But I didn't really have someone tell me like, hey, you're not quite ready for this yet. You should be working on that instead. And that's another thing that I feel like I've been able to integrate into our training program was I made tons of mistakes. Growing up, I did everything just trial and error to try to figure it out. And I learned a lot from that. So we try to just strategize it. And you don't want to be doing some type of race that, if it's your first race ever, you don't want to line up with 40 people on the line. Like the chances of getting hurt are going to be higher. So you want to try to minimize that risk of getting hurt as best as possible. It is a dangerous sport.
After a rider is had a decent tip over and they're not injured to where they can't ride and train, the skill set's there, the techniques are still with the rider. They're not going to decondition or end up out of shape overnight, yet they get on the bike and they're scared. Like, what do you do to try and start to bring back that confidence so they're not focused on crashing again and they're actually just focused on riding?
Yeah, I guess that's a tough one, and everyone handles it differently. If someone, for example, like crashes off the start and they were trying their hardest and they're right up there in the mix, like how do you convince them like, hey dude, try that again on the next one, and I promise that won't happen. Some people can fall over and get right back up and it doesn't affect them, and other people will fall and you truly see it affect them. And that's why racing is 90% mental. You can have every technique possible, but if you mentally are frightened or scared on that line, it's going to be hard to go out there and give it 100%. So we're trying to just make sure that a training day, if you're having a lot of fun, like if you have a race this weekend and you have a really fun day of training, you're going to kind of go to sleep in a great mood. You're going to wake up the next day and you're going to be thinking about how much fun you had. But if you're going out there and you have a race this weekend and someone is just destroying you all week, you can get down on yourself and things like that. So we try to like manage those emotions too. We're just trying to make sure that mentally they're ready to go when the gate drops. So yeah, we're trying to avoid those crashes. We're trying to avoid all those things. When it does happen, it can take a little bit to get back up there again, but we're always working on that mindset and the mental aspect.
And it's a mixed bag, kind of like you said, everybody's going to handle it different. Yet there you are as the coach, you are the one holding the mixed bag. So you might have somebody where you just tell them, hey, do it again, it won't happen. And boom, they try it. And I believe good coaches, the athlete will look at the coach and say, all right, coach, because they trust you. but you're still going to have some people that just won't. And you're in the position where you've got to figure out the right avenue to correct it.
Yeah, and that's why I'm always looking at the positives. Like, what can we learn from that situation? Like, yeah, that sucked, or it didn't go the way you planned. How can we work on that? Like, what can you learn from that to do it better next time? So there's always something to gain. And I feel like those hardships and those ups and downs, like you have to have those, like the hard times to grow from it. If everything is easy, if you just go out there and you're really not working on much, and you'll have fun and stuff, but if you really want to progress, you have to have that structure as well.
The obstacles are the staircase. Like
Yeah.
we're not avoiding that if you
Yeah,
want to get better.
Yeah, you don't want to step away from it. You want to face it head on and try to figure out, like how to get through those tough times, and that really makes you grow as a person as well.
So business wise, you offer one-on-one coaching, a larger group experience where you have the two coaches, one's teaching, one's demonstrating, and then after the demonstration, they're both in the dirt. But then this last year, it sounded like from a business standpoint, you started to do more small group coaching.
Yep.
Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think that's important. We try to do a little bit of everything, like you were saying. We do the one-on-one because some people really need that one-on-one. A lot of beginners, we recommend the one-on-one if it's your first time on a track. You don't want to just go out there with tons of people with all kinds of different, experience and skill levels, and go out there and try to learn it. So we have the one-on-ones, and we'll even work with people, suspension testing, all that kind of stuff works great for the one-on-one. We'll do a big group. And at first, when we first started, some of those groups can get pretty crowded. And that's kind of how it was at some of these places when I was growing up. You go to a big facility, you can get lost out there. There's so many people. I think like a middle-sized group, you need a couple people to kind of push you. Some people feed off that very well. Like they love having someone out there to push them. And we try to get it so it's similar skill levels. So we'll have everything's a little bit different every week. So we have, a little bit of one-on-one, a little bit of semi-private, and the group stuff, where a lot of these facilities are just monthly, one big group, and come on out and just ride, and you'll kind of get lost in the group.
From a business standpoint, the small group or semi-private, we teach and have taught, we did it in our own business, a lot of our clients to do that and to focus on more revenue per customer. And understand, anybody that's watching this saying it's not all about the money. Well, I got news for you. Lukas got to put gas in his tractors. He has to maintain the equipment to water his track. Euphoria MX has to make money. There's nothing wrong with revenue per customer and increasing that, because the track owner, the coach, Euphoria MX owner can invest in the business. But looking at that small group dynamic, what's nice is it brings up the revenue per unit of time, revenue per hour. Also see this with one-on-one training. If somebody wants Monday at 4:00, once you sign someone up, you can't sign someone else up. So someone's not getting training. So now you're able to train more people at the time that they're available to come in, get the training, and you probably make a little bit more money. But the other thing you mentioned is that group dynamic, and are you seeing the riders pushing each other and stuff?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Everyone will kind of push each other. And it's really cool when, you get a battle, you get two of these kids that are really pushing each other. And then you see that when you get to a national, these kids are doing way better because they're able to push each other at home when we're training here, it's huge. You have to have someone to push you. And, the one-on-one is important too. Sometimes you need to just have that, like, just all eyes on you. But you also have to have, like, now once you learn all these techniques, you need to be able to do it at a race. So if you can't do it when you're practicing with other riders and training with other riders, it's gonna be hard to do at the race day. So you got to be able to adapt and work on these techniques when there's other people around too. But we'll do that as a small group. And with enough people now, we can have like an advanced group, intermediate group, and beginner group.
And then also within that small group environment, there has to be benefit. And I can speak personally for me because I've experienced it, looking at other riders being taught and then being like, oh, I'm doing that wrong. Like, I do it the way he's doing it. And the coach is saying, this is the better way. So it's an opportunity for the other people to learn too. And we're back to that see, hear, do.
Yeah. And that, yeah, sometimes you could pull someone off and be like, hey, you're not doing this. Look, there's literally everyone else out there is doing it. And if you can see that, sometimes like, oh yeah, I guess I am slacking on that, or I wasn't actually thinking about that when I was out there riding. So that kind of goes back to the, let's focus on one thing here. I see you can make a really big improvement in this one area. Everyone else is doing it. You got to really focus on that out there. And you, sometimes if you're just doing a one-on-one, you don't really get that experience as well.
I think it's win-win for everybody. The coaching business has an opportunity to serve more people, generate more revenue, and the athletes have an opportunity to watch other people riding, and they get to soak in all the instruction those other riders are getting, as well as the stuff they're getting themselves.
Yeah.
One of the things I find interesting that you do, and I want to ask where this came from, but it's something we tell everybody, like, be willing to give value first. You know,
Right.
give value. Don't look to get money for it. You go to a local race. If you're there, there's a good chance that you're helping set the sag on people's dirt bikes that aren't even your customers.
Right.
How did you arrive at that? Because you talk about giving value. In some cases, these people aren't, like, I would say most aren't even your customers, yet there you are.
Yeah, I say again, it kind of goes back to like day one when I was starting to race and go through the ranks, and I'm getting to these different tracks and I'm riding with new people and I'm going across the country. Well, some days you're riding on sand and some days you're riding on clay, and some days it's muddy and some tracks are really bumpy and you have all different kinds of obstacles and stuff. So sag would be like setting your suspension on the bike. That was one thing growing up. Like I didn't really have, like, there was not much knowledge. Like there wasn't many people teaching it. So I would kind of just go with that trial and error. Like I'm at this track, let's try these different settings and all that kind of stuff. And I found out like, whoa, this is a huge aspect of riding a dirt bike. And if we don't understand, like if I don't understand it, I don't know how I'm going to make it to the top level. So I made it a point to really get good at it. I started messing with suspension when I was probably 15 or 16. I'm 27 now, so I have over 10 years of experience with it. It's one of those things too, where if you just come to a training class, you're like, hey, can you teach me about suspension? I really can't, because, you know, there's certain things I could tell you, but it's really, it comes to that 10 years of experience. Like I could look at the bumps and the spacing and the size and how hard or loose the soil is and just know this bike needs to be about here for it to work properly. And if I could do that and they go ride it, they're like, wow, that's a game changer.
You're doing that for people. You're not getting paid. So Lucas is at the racetrack as a coach and a business owner, and you're just offering, like, I've seen it. You're just setting people's sag and helping them. How'd you come up? Like, why are you doing that?
I suppose it all comes down to just passion. Like I'm trying to be that person that I didn't have, you know, like there's got to be someone out there that can do those things for you. And if I could be that person to, you know, help, and, you know, I can't teach you 10 plus years of experience right away, but I can, you know, just go over the basics and make sure that people understand the importance of suspension. There's a lot of people that will go buy a dirt bike and just go ride it. They don't understand that, you know, the spring has tension on it. You can put more or less tension on it and you can set that bike up specifically for your weight. It only takes a couple minutes. And if I can just do that for each rider at the track and keep them on their bike and teach them like, hey, this bike, you know, can feel way better than what it is, that's going to make riding more fun for that person. So the passion.
From a business standpoint, I see that as you're able to provide value. You're not in a sales position. People walk up, you're usually wearing a Euphoria branded hoodie, t-shirt, it's a hat, whatever it might be. So people know you're with something called Euphoria MX, but
Right.
you're not there looking for people's money. I mean, I literally watched at a race. I don't know how many people, one after the other, came up, and they, you know, in some cases they were another coaching business customers, yet there you were. And that's, you know, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. And that's kind of just the way I've actually been my entire life, kind of going back to like those little, like if I was injured for 6 months at a time, you wouldn't just find me sitting at home, like moping around, being all pouty. I was at the track recording that one corner, being like, dude, there's 4 ruts in this corner. I'd run all the way across the track to the starting gate just to show my buddy who's sitting on the line, like, look at this corner. There's 4 ruts over there. If you take this line, it's gonna be the best line. And that's just the way I've always been. Like if I see something, or if I can do something to just make it that much better for you, I'll try it.
I think that speaks to why you've been growing and why you've been successful. And it's why you're where you are today as a coach. But the business thing, like that, like we outright tell our clients that, like, find something to give away for free of value. Like quite literally give the farm away. people will come back and they'll ask for more, and it'll give you, it will open the door for you to have a conversation about maybe they become your customer. But I've watched you do that, and I'm like, this is brilliant. And I was that guy. Like, I bought my kid a dirt bike. I didn't set the sag. I didn't even think
Yeah.
about it.
Money doesn't buy happiness. So if I can just reach back, like that's truly what makes me happy, is being able to help. And it's really cool that, I put my entire life into riding dirt bikes, and I knew I wanted to be a top professional. I knew I wanted to surround myself with dirt bikes the rest of my life. I wasn't sure what I was going to do to make that happen. But at this point, I have found a way to make money doing it. So it's just, I think everyone needs to find that thing that they're passionate about and at least just give it a try. It's like, you never know what you can do unless you try. That's why I'm here today.
I believe anybody can be anything if they want to, but you're going to have to put in the time. You're going to have to pay the tuition and get the experience and become an expert. If we look at the author Malcolm Gladwell's book, Tipping Point, he talks about 10,000 times to be good. We used to tell ball sport athletes, well, if it's 10,000 to be good, you start at 10,000 reps and you keep going. We look at Lucas, we look at Euphoria MX rider development, that it's 10,000 times. It's how many hours do you have at a racetrack going back to the time you're 7 years old? How many hours do you have on the seat of a bike? That built the foundation, and that gave you the experience. Even like today, you had asked before we went live about, what we're going to talk about and different things, and how you've never done something like this. Well, the reality of it is you don't have to prepare.
Right.
You've spent the last 19 years of your life, 20 years of your life preparing.
Right.
You're an expert.
Yep.
Remaining relevant. So you found a way to remain relevant to the sport of motocross.
For staying relevant in the sport, at this point, I'm really studying the tracks and stuff. Like, I'm going to these amateur races and I'm really studying all the little things, like I was talking about, kind of like the dirt, the soil. I'm really trying to get all of that perfect. So we have those little things going. So, and staying relevant in the sport too, just studying it as much as possible. And even adding in a couple of the things that, aren't really huge in the sport, like the mental aspect of it is really overlooked. So we're trying to integrate that as much as well.
You mentioning that, what was it, 90-10 for racing?
Yeah.
I look at when a rider falls and they get back up. So they're not injured. There's no ambulance ride, nothing like that. They get back up. Like I said before, the skills are there. They didn't decondition in 2 seconds.
Right.
Yet they get on the motorcycle, they start riding again, and they're not the same. And that's all between their ears.
Yeah, it truly is. I mean, it's like kind of like that, see it, believe it, achieve it. Like, if you're sitting there on the line telling yourself like, oh man, there's a bunch of fast people here today. Like, that dude showed up. Like, I'm most likely going to be fifth. Like, that's a very limiting mindset when you're sitting there on the line. But if you can really just have that internal talk with yourself and keep trying to tell yourself like, I am good enough and I do have what it takes and I've put in the effort and today is my day to shine, that right there will change your whole day. And it makes a huge difference with your riding.
And I don't think that's talked about enough by coaches and trainers, because again, I watch coaches, and good coaches inspire confidence in their athletes. Doesn't matter the sport. I don't think we as coaches and trainers spend enough time sharing that with the athletes. Like, listen, you have to believe you've done the work and you're ready and able to do this.
Yeah. And there's sometimes it can get defeating for the riders and even sometimes the parents, where the parents are watching, like, what's going on? Like, I've seen him ride way better. But as a trainer, sometimes I could look at it and be like, his suspension was off, or those little things. So if I can go in and fine tune it, and then the next moto they go out and their confidence is back up again, it's like those little things can make a big difference too. And there's some parents that have never raced or ridden, and, they're watching from the outside. And if I can just give them, my perspective, like, hey, I've been in that situation. I know what's going through his head. This is the biggest race he's ever done in his entire life. Like, there's so many things going on. And, or sometimes you don't quite reach that goal and everyone's like, oh, well, I let myself down because I set this big goal, but I didn't accomplish it. But in some ways too, that's going to make you want to work harder. And, if you set a goal, you don't have to get it that next race. Like, just, keep progressing until you get there.
That goes back to the years of experience, the tuition, becoming an expert, having more than 10,000 reps. You can watch the bike, and I've seen you do this. You watch the bike and say, the suspension's not right for the track today. That's why the bike is doing this.
Yeah.
And if you fix that, and I've seen you fix it, and then the rider is like a different person on the track.
Yeah. And really the only people I've seen do that are the top teams. Like, there's, a couple top teams, you've had these riders like, Adam Cianciarulo, who's been a factory rider since he was, 10 years old or something like that. He's had that guy sitting there the whole time watching his suspension, studying it. I got the videos, the bike's kind of kicking, it's moving this much in the bumps. I've studied that footage for 10, 12 years as well. So I don't know if there's many other coaches that are doing that.
Now, what about training outside of on the bike, on two wheels in the dirt, whether it's fitness training or even ground-based training? Where are you seeing that going?
It's definitely growing a lot. I'd say 10 years ago, not many people, like, it was just have fun, ride your dirt bike. So that has, and it's still about having fun and riding your dirt bike. If you lose that aspect, you're not gonna get as good as if you're having fun, in my opinion. The training is really important. Like, if you can become more flexible, you're less likely to get hurt. If you're stronger, you're going to be able to move the bike around a little bit better. And not only that, but be more confident on the line. There's all kinds of science with, your bones can become stronger, your muscles, your joints, your ligaments, all that kind of stuff. So I think it's huge if you want to be riding a dirt bike, especially at a top level, and not get injured. You have to be putting the time in.
From a training standpoint, from an exercise standpoint, weight training, cardio, in my opinion, and this, I've experienced this, the time in the gym, the time doing the ground-based work allows you to be more confident on the dirt bike because it's easier. It's just like a rider riding a bike with a incorrect suspension setting. They're getting bumped and tossed around, and they're working harder to ride, and they know it. You correct the suspension, you get the right setting, they go out, and it's easier to ride, and it's easier to ride fast. Their confidence goes up.
Right.
If you put the time in the gym, off the track, off the bike, and you put the time in to your conditioning, and you show up and get on the bike, and the bike feels light, the bike feels easy to move. You finish a moto and you're short of breath, you're sweating, but you're not gasping for air. You're going to be more confident.
Right. Yeah. If you're gasping for air and you're about to like faint or pass out or puke at the end of the moto, there's a good chance you started to fade at some point. And like, if you start to fade, you're going to fall back positions. Your technique is going to get sloppy. Pretty soon your arms are tired. You could barely pull in the clutch or the brakes. And if you get to that point, not only is it dangerous, but your results aren't going to be good either. If you could be in great shape, you're going to be that many steps ahead of the competition, because there's a lot of people that aren't in great shape. And if you can just outwork them in the gym or off the bike, it will pay off dividends.
And you're going to be confident. I've had 2 times riding a dirt bike. Once about 20 years ago, I was in the best shape of my life. I was a competitive bodybuilder. I was young and I was in amazing shape. And I remember the first time, that particular period of time, going out, the weather broke, and I went and rode my dirt bike, and it was easy. Everything about it was easy. And then I actually had the tail end of this riding season. I had changed what I was doing in the gym, and I went, it was at your track, and I could feel that. And the biggest thing was my confidence. I was comfortable, and I'm like, I could put this. Now understand, I'm the old slow guy, but for me, I could put the bike where I wanted. I have not been able to do that in 20 years.
Yeah. I think too, just being able to stay consistent with something. Like, you tell yourself, I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to stay consistent with it. Like, that right there takes discipline, and to ride a dirt bike takes a lot of discipline as well. So you got to be able to do those things, and that adds up. And kind of like I was saying too, like, I did all those things growing up, and it's kind of carried on with my whole life now. So I do think that's a huge aspect with it.
The little things and the discipline matters. And that's how we see this often. How many former athletes in ball sports, just because there's a lot more ball sport athletes than there are in motorsports, end up doing high level athletics. So typically collegiate level, maybe pro. And then they seem to seamlessly go have this successful career doing this thing over here. And it's like, well, it's because at a young age, they became disciplined and focused, able to do the small things well with consistently. And I think you're a great example of that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've basically done it all and seen it all. And I've trialed and errored with all that kind of stuff too. So yeah, it's all changed a lot. And, I've saved all my training programs throughout the years and kind of switched some things up. And, but yeah, we try to teach all these riders all that kind of stuff as well, and really make sure they have that knowledge in that area.
I usually ask people for their top 3 must do's and don't do's. So what would you say your top 3 must-dos in business are? Like, what are the 3 things you feel you guys have to do at Euphoria?
At Euphoria, 3 must-dos, I'd have to say building trust with everyone. We try to build that trust with all of our clients and riders, and that's huge. Staying on the same page with Cody and making sure that we're, putting in the work on and off the track and making things better. We always have to, make sure everything is safe, making sure the jumps are shaped up properly. It's got to be watered properly. Being organized is huge. You have to have a coach. You have to be structured. You have to have someone watching over you. And then I'd say the don'ts would be, don't just try to do it on your own. Don't try to look for any shortcuts. Don't make it so hard that you're not having fun. It's got to be fun. So that's a must as well. You got to be having fun.
Yeah, and I think the fun thing's important. Otherwise, and I've seen that for coaches and trainers. I saw it in our own business. We'd have parents bring kids in for training that the kids didn't want to be trained.
Yeah,
they didn't even want to play the sport the dad was making them play anymore. Like, they were so far checked out, and we actually said, no, I'm not taking your money and you're not signing your kid up. They don't want to be here.
Yeah, you have a lot of that. There's some kids that are having a blast and they're going home begging, like, when can I come back? When can I come back? And then you have other people where they come off the track. I was excited. I saw the kid doing the techniques that I told him to do, and dad's over there yelling at him. So it's like, that kid's not going to have as much fun. If there's one thing only to take away from it, is have as much fun as possible.
What's on the horizon for Euphoria? Where are you, like, what are your plans going forward?
There's a couple options. You see a lot of, like, there's, huge facilities that are doing full time. Like right now we're doing kind of like each session is, we'll do the one-on-one, the semi-private, the group. We could kind of go that route where we have a full-time facility. I don't know if it would be the same location I'm at now, maybe buy like something bigger. But also, if I were to do a big facility like that, I think it would be ultimately awesome to have a racetrack too, where, this race I just went to in Florida, they do 1 race a year. They just pulled in 5,000 racers. It's crazy. They come from all over the country and actually out of the country as well. So I'd say maybe even a race series eventually, only have like 1 or 2 races a year and then full-time training. So I think that would be ultimately my goal.
Anything else you want to add?
I'd say if there's anyone out there thinking about getting a dirt bike, you should definitely do it. Go to that USMCA website, check it out. There's definitely going to be some coaches in your area. And if not, I'm sure you could either reach out to them or reach out to me. I can, give you some feedback. I know people from all over the country. Definitely look into riding dirt bikes and having fun with it. And if there's anything that you're passionate about, make sure you go out there and you try to make it happen and just see what you can do with it.
So, and I have one thing to add, and it was in my notes and I kind of skipped over it, but you do something, and you've done this from day one, and it's how I heard about you. And we'll just share, you using Canva to create what you post for your next training event, right?
Yep.
And you have a visually appealing picture, graphic, if you will. It says what the athletes are going to work on, what they're going to get out of the training. It has the location, it has the time and date. It's super simple, and you're quite literally creating it off your cell phone, right?
Yeah.
I see a lot of small businesses, they're not doing that. Like, you need to make it in the blink of an eye simple so people understand what the training's about, like what it is you offer, where it is, when it is. Super simple.
Yeah, super simple. But again, I feel I almost have 10 plus years of experience with that, with my dad sitting at all these races, recording it, and I'm sitting there studying it. Sometimes I'd go on YouTube and make like a little edit with all these videos when I'm, 12, 13 years old, just having fun with editing videos and just all of that. Like now 27 years old, every little thing that I've done, with dirt bikes, whether it's working on tracks and going to this facility and, bobcat work or whatever it is, it's all kind of added into where I'm at today. So it's really crazy to see that.
And it shows up in the things that you're doing, right down to when you post when the next training session is going to be.
Yeah.
You can see that, and it comes across in the ad or the image that's marketing that next event. Well, cool. Well, Lukas, a million thanks, man. Appreciate you taking a piece out of your day to spend some time chatting coaching, the business of coaching, the business of motocross and supercross.
Thanks, Ray. It was awesome. Thank you for having me. And we'll talk again soon.
If you like our content, be sure to subscribe to our channel. Leave us a comment below. Also, be sure to check us out on your favorite podcast provider. See the links in the description below.